Washington, the McLaughlin Group, the American original. For over 3 decades, the sharpest minds, best sources, hardest talk.
Issue 1, State of the Union finale.
I believe in you, the American people, and that's why I stand here as confident as I have ever been that the state of our union is strong. Thank you. God bless you. God bless the United States of America.
President Obama delivered his last State of the Union address to Congress on Tuesday. Notably, the Commander-in-Chief asked for courses of action on gun control and an increase of the current minimum wage, now fixed at $7.25 per hour. Mr. Obama also posed, quote, 4 big questions that we as a country have to answer regardless of who the next president is or who controls the next Congress. First, how to expand opportunity in the U.S. Second, how to use technology to promote social interests. Third, how to protect the U.S. without presenting the U.S. as the world's policeman. Fourth, how to strengthen bipartisan Democrat-Republican cooperation. He also pushed back the curtain on his election year opinions on Donald Trump's immigration views and the foreign policy ideas of Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio. Question, how did President Obama do? Pat Buchanan.
It was a good speech as a speech, John, but it stated less the State of the Union than the state of Barack Obama's mind. I mean, he's very positive on where the economy is going. Bernie Sanders is out on the hustings saying, the middle class is going under, the rich are getting everything. And then Obama says, look, this isn't like the Cold War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, all the nuclear weapons threaten us. Bunch of guys in pickup trucks. What do we find? You got explosions in Jakarta, explosions in Paris, explosions in San Bernardino. Everybody tremendously concerned about ISIS, which is a cancer that is metastasizing. Now, it's not the Cuban Missile Crisis, but it is deadly serious. And quite frankly, 2/3 of the country, 3/4 of the country, think the nation is going in the wrong direction, John. And that was not the mood, or that was not the tenor of the president's address. So what I say is it reflected more the mind of Barack Obama than it did the State of the Union as the American people see it.
Pollyannish.
I don't know that it was Pollyannish. There are good things going on in the economy, but it didn't seem realistic. It didn't seem to comport with the reality today as the people see it.
Barely 45% of Americans approve of the Obama presidency. The majority disapproved. Obama is now trying to talk his way into a better legacy than his results have actually achieved. Is that the height of vanity? Is it vainglorious?
I don't say vainglorious.
Hold on, please, Ellen. Let me.
I don't think it's
I'll give you two questions.
Look, the president. There are things that have improved dramatically. Unemployment's cut in half, although the labor force is a smaller percentage of the population than it's been in 40 years. Right. So he emphasizes the things that are positive, and there are positive things, but the larger picture the American people see does not comport with what the president said.
Only 31.3 million Americans tuned in, Eleanor. This is the lowest since Nielsen started rating the speeches in the 1990s. Obama's low ratings are a reflection of the extent to which he has polarized the country. Some believe.
Right. Where are you getting that from? Some right-wing site?
Where are you getting your language from? Some left-wing site?
Yes, you got it. I thought it was a terrific speech. It was modeled structurally after FDR and the 4 freedoms. He set up 4 questions and he answered them. It was a nuanced description of the problems that we see in the world. It was a realistic description, and he fired back quite nicely at Republicans who want to carpet bomb our so-called enemies, that would include civilian populations. And he also noted that if you are condemning Muslims, you're making it a lot harder to fight ISIS because we have to join in a coalition with Arab countries. It wasn't a soundbite speech, but I think he nicely set up the contrast as we go into this election year. And the fact that declaring this economy a disaster on the heels of job creation of almost 300,000 jobs and 70 months straight of job creation, I believe is fiction, which is what the president said, and running down America and saying we're weak and everybody else is stronger is hot air. And I think that's the argument the Democrats are going to make, while the Republicans say everything is terrible.
Was the speech too political with its criticisms of Republican candidates? I ask you.
No, I think that was inevitable in an election year, quite frankly, and I think the way he did it was a relatively small part of the speech. The disagreements, I would say, the problems of the speech were, of course, notably foreign policy, because of his idea that everyone else is delusional if you think ISIS is an existential threat. Could it destroy the United States? No, but it could destroy the fabric of our societies. And you see that in aftermath of Paris, how people interact with each other. Do they go out? Do they go out for dinner? What is their concern about their children going to school one day? And that has a really significant impact psychologically. I would say the positives of the speech with this call for bipartisanship, the call at the end of the speech talking about what makes America great, which is true, and it deserves to be said, and the president was right to say it. And finally, the idea that we can expand opportunity. And I think it was positive that the president, as a juxtaposition to the criticism Republican presidential candidates, had some words of praise for Paul Ryan. Perhaps now, going forward, there can be at least a dialogue in terms of issues like poverty and opportunity where we can come together and discuss. And so there were positives and negatives, but as a president's final State of the Union, inevitably it was going to spark controversy on all sides.
Will the speech lead to a positive reevaluation of Obama's record?
I think
President Obama's record.
Well, he certainly was talking about his legacy without mentioning the L word. He was looking at the long-distance future. As he said, normally these State of the Union speeches are laundry lists of different interests and all. He, in this occasion, like Tom was saying, focused more on the long-range values. What really struck me was his saying that his biggest regret was that he had not, he had failed to bring the country together more, bridge those gaps, which was how he arrived on the national scene with his 2004 Democratic Convention speech, that great One Nation address. And we've seen anything but that.
Right.
We've seen division. Yeah. The division didn't begin with his administration. I feel like well, a lot of people are just noticing these divisions now because Barack Obama is president. We had them under Bill Clinton and Hillary. We've had them all along, but right now they become more of a signature part of his legacy.
Would you buy a used car from Barack Obama?
I would. I wouldn't buy one from Donald Trump, so that's why I'm amazed that so many people are supporting him.
He doesn't sell used cars.
He sells a lot of things. He sells things, though. That's what he does. He sells things, and I'd be very skeptical about buying.
Let me try to persuade you that you would not buy a used car from him.
Sure.
He's detached from reality. He shirks responsibility for the state of affairs he has created, and generally can't be trusted. Just ask those who believed him when he said they could keep their insurance if they wanted.
I think he was overselling that. That's what it was. And I'm
Overselling?
sure Donald Trump never oversells, right? No, the fact is that was overselling the program, but it was still valuable.
Issue 2, 6 GOP debate. Republican presidential candidates debated each other in North Charleston, South Carolina this week. Hosted by the Fox Business Channel, there were 2 debates. The first early scheduled debate featured Carly Fiorina, Mike Huckabee, and Rick Santorum. Rand Paul boycotted this debate, saying he was wrongly excluded from the prime time debate. That prime time debate featured 7 participants: Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Ben Carson, Chris Christie, Jeb Bush, and John Kasich. And with the Iowa caucuses just 2 weeks away, the major candidates jockeyed aggressively for the limelight.
We are going to kick your rear end out of the White House.
There's a big question mark on your head, and you can't do that to the party.
The Constitution hasn't changed. But the poll numbers have.
This is the difference between being a governor and being a senator.
She might be going back and forth between the White House and the courthouse.
We have to find out what's going on. I said temporarily. I didn't say permanently. I said temporarily.
With more than 10 million people talking about the issue, is there anything you've heard that makes you want to rethink this position?
No.
No serviceman or servicewoman will be forced to be on their knees, and any nation that captures our fighting men and women will feel the full force and fury of the United States of America.
Who triumphed in the debate hall? Pat.
Donald Trump did, John. It was his best debate of the entire session. The really critical moment was when he stood up and defended New York against the slur from Cruz about how New York values, etc. And it was very, very effective. Secondly, even though Cruz, I think, won the engagement over the birther issue, the very fact that they're discussing whether or not Cruz is qualified to run as president, that they've elevated this issue, is damaging to Cruz. I think what happened in this debate is Trump has emerged, I think even by critics, as the winner and the clear front runner, and the two people challenging him most closely are Cruz and Rubio, with Cruz the closest, and one other figure is in it, and I would say Chris Christie, but it was Donald Trump's best night.
What's fascinating is to watch the Republican establishment begin to rationalize Trump as the nominee. They're now saying that if he does win the nomination, nobody's talking about not supporting him, and Trump now seems to be taking on more of a teddy bear style in these debates.
That's true.
But yeah, kinder, gentler. But the other star was clearly Ted Cruz. I mean, he is one heck of a debater. And even on the 9/11 thing, where Trump clearly won that, and you know, I'm a New Yorker, and when Trump said, if you're going to criticize New York, you got to come through me, I was, hey, yes, yes.
I'll ever see you and Trump together standing at the barricade.
But then
Eleanor softening on Trump.
I'm adjusting to reality, and but then on 9/11, then Cruz was clapping. I mean, that was a very clever turnaround on his part, and the people in the hall were clearly with Cruz. They booed Trump a couple of times, which is interesting. So,
have you heard of Lawrence Tribe?
Oh, very much so. In fact, he recently filed a brief in the Supreme Court opposing the Obama administration regulations on coal. And Obama was one of his students, just as Ted Cruz was one of his students.
Last night, Trump was Tribe was on the air, John, and he
so?
said there's a very powerful argument that Trump is basically right and Cruz is not qualified, and it does have to be adjudicated. And see, this is why, even though I thought Cruz won the exchange with Trump right there, I think the fact that the issue is out there and elevated, we're just watching about it on TV.
That's right. Well, I think very quickly, one of the key takeaways here, as well as that, is that the establishment Republican candidates have a big problem. Jeb Bush I think Jeb Bush is really done now. I think you see Chris Christie coming up to challenge him there in that position. But I think Rubio had a bad night in the sense that Ted Cruz and Donald Trump, you know, that was the real choice that came out of it. That's who we're discussing. That's the narrative. And that will generate the news cycle. I also think at that lower level, it's generating that primary discussion. You are seeing people from Rubio who really don't like Trump potentially going towards Cruz.
Did Cruz do a good job handling questions about the New York Times report concerning his $1 million loan from Goldman Sachs for his Senate race? Who wants it?
Clarence?
I think I'll take it. I thought that he did a surprisingly good job, just simply because the issue seemed to die after he dealt with it. They went back and forth on it, but compared to the Canada issue, the birthright issue, that one still has legs. But I think he may have put Goldman Sachs to rest.
How did he describe the Times interview or piece?
Well, he just dismissed the New
York
Times.
Hit job.
He called it a hit piece.
Yeah, but John, let me mention something else. Where Trump succeeded is he elevated the trade issue, the trade deficits, the tariff issue, all these things, and you saw Kasich, sort of people starting to agree with him. The Republican Party is moving toward economic nationalism.
But that 45%,
there.
that 45% tariff, Trump is alone on that, with you, of course, but the rest of the Republicans don't like that.
I think that trade issue is very important to have a debate. But the reason I'm on the flip side, you start having trade tariffs coming up, the prices of goods that Americans don't know are foreign, they do not want that absorbed cost going out, right?
Yep.
That economic cost
You tell
to
them,
those families.
You tell them the Chinese are stealing our jobs. We're going to put 20% tariff on Chinese goods and cut taxes on American businesses, small businesses.
But they're
it's
going
a
to come
winner.
back and ask how does that affect the price
yeah,
of my
right.
shirts at Walmart? You know, because that's what has kept that.
They'll be
argument
making
from getting
Walmart
anywhere.
shirts in the United States.
They've been hearing that for 30 years now. You know, that's the thing. So I don't know.
We
I'll
gotta
be very
change.
surprised.
We got to change, Clarence.
I mean,
Quick question. Chris Cillizza calls Cruz and Trump the winners of the debate. He's a Washington Post guy.
Right.
Along with Senator Marco Rubio, who came out hot from the start. He called Ben Carson a loser, saying the neurosurgeon has often looked out of his depth in these debates, but never more so than tonight. Do you share these views of Chris Cillizza? I ask you, Clarence Page.
I say, as far as, Trump and Cruz, I thought tied last night for different reasons. They were for one thing, Cruz is an experienced Harvard debater, award-winning, et cetera. Trump is not as articulate, but he came across as real, as genuine. That 9/11 moment, I'll often say this, but that was Trump's finest moment. He really came across with real sincerity.
Genuine. We were talking before the show. You see, Trump's making all these faces. Obviously, he's not a skilled, experienced debater, but there's a reality and an authenticity that you start chuckling. I mean, he grimaces and does all these things you're not supposed to do.
That's right.
But it's authentic.
Issue 3, Media Meltdowns. Al Jazeera America will cease broadcasting in April. Owned by the government of Qatar, this U.S. TV news channel began airing in 2013. Its executives had bold ambitions to challenge CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC. Towards that end, they spent hundreds of millions of dollars recruiting senior journalists from major U.S. networks and establishing lavishly equipped bureaus. But while Al Jazeera America won plaudits for its investigative reporting, viewers never arrived. Today, as closure looms, the channel attracts around 15 to 40,000 viewers during prime time. 5% to 10% of other U.S. news networks viewing figures. And other major media outlets also got bad news. The TV arm of Huffington Post Live, will soon abandon live broadcasts and focus on social media video content delivered to various outlets. And note this, the New Republic, a seasoned liberal magazine, was also put up for sale by owner Chris Hughes, multimillionaire co-founder of the website named Facebook. He says his magazine needs a new owner to make it profitable. Question, is Al Jazeera America a casualty of the falling price of oil? Pat Buchanan.
No, it's not, John. It's a casualty of the splintering of the cable audience, not only CNN and MSNBC and Fox, but also Bloomberg. You got Russia Today, which is in many ways a good channel. You got the BBC, which puts on good work. I'm sorry to see, frankly, Al Jazeera go, because I know a lot of folks over there and some good people, and they're going to lose their jobs. But also, and you got to admit that when you call it Al Jazeera and it's coming out of the Arab world, there's a sort of a recoil over here because of all our problems with that part of the world that cause people, I think, to be skeptical of its product.
Well,
that has been.
They're not going to drop Al Jazeera.
No,
if they drop Al Jazeera, I would agree with you.
That's the point that I wanted to make. Al Jazeera America is just one arm of that network. The Al Jazeera Arab and Al Jazeera English can continue. And the problem with the American channel is they didn't get enough cable outlets. They didn't have a big enough audience. So in terms of media meltdowns, the three you cite are fairly minor compared to the whole meltdown of the entire media world that we've lived through for the last 4 years, which has really transformed the whole landscape.
Streaming video is replacing cable.
Yeah.
The growth trend line favors streaming video over or instead of cable subscription.
You do see that, and there's concerns. That's why you see, for example, concerns about Disney and the stocks and ESPN moving online.
The
What are the takeaways?
The failure of Yahoo and the Huffington Post in this sphere are not indicative of the overall trend, however.
Well, I think the key, people are still going to watch cable. It's a diversifying model, but I think 2 points here. The New Republic, the concern there was that you have a disagreement with someone who wants to shake up the industry, and quite frankly, journalists there who didn't want to realize it's a profitable, you have to be profitable. You know, I made nothing when I started working out doing it because there's so much saturation of competition. And the second point on Al Jazeera as well, look, they did great investigative reporting, but at the same time, there were people who were never going to brand into them. I would distribute with Pat about Russia Today.
Yeah, but the New Republic never made money. It's not ever going to make money. and Mr. Hughes really transformed it in a way that didn't work.
New Republic.
But it needed to make some money, right?
Why are you so gently criticizing Hughes? First, he alienated the staff, leading to mass resignations, then dumped $20 million trying to remake the magazine as a for-profit business venture.
Right.
It was folly.
It was right.
You understand that?
It was folly.
I agree with that. I think I just said that the New Republic never made money and it wasn't going to make money. And he had all these phantasmagorical dreams. But the business model for print journalism is still very tough. Yeah, right. And he didn't figure out how to crack it.
None of these little magazines, National Review, Nation, make money. Do they? They all depend on 501c3. You have
to diversify somewhat to get to.
I want to say that I rue the day that we will not have the New Republic.
Well, I think we're going to have it.
Somebody will buy it. Somebody will buy it who's willing to lose money.
You got to fund the not-for-profit.
I thought the New Republic's editorial positions were so beautifully worded.
Well, don't give up on them, John. Don't give up on them because they're still online and they've got more subscribers online than in print.
I'm not saying necessarily point of view, but they nevertheless were able to mass sentences and talk like educated.
You're right.
Educated.
Those were the days of Michael Kinsley, editor, quite frankly.
What is it?
No,
Michael Kinsley, my partner, was editor. He did a great job over there.
He did a great job.
And they still got some great articles in there. But you know, the thing is, the whole media landscape is changing now, and but it was never intended to be a for-profit publication, and I think that's going to stay not-for-profit.
Well, thanks for that insight you're sharing with us.
I'm always happy to contribute, John.
Issue 4, Guantanamo.
That's why I will keep working to shut down the prison at Guantanamo. It is expensive, it is unnecessary, and it only serves as a recruitment brochure for our enemies. There's a better way.
President Obama wants to close a U.S. military prison at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, referred to simply as Guantanamo. Guantanamo, the president notably claims, feeds terrorist propaganda and is too expensive, costing hundreds of thousands of dollars, adding up to millions, some say, per detainee each year. But Republicans and some Democrats in Congress say Guantanamo Bay protects national security. These conservatives have prevented the commander-in-chief from moving detainees to prisons on U.S. soil. But note this, on its own authority, over the last few years, the Obama administration has released detainees into the custody of other nations. The latest such transfer took place on Thursday of this week, January the 14th, when 10 prisoners were released to governments in the Middle East. Further releases are expected in the coming weeks. Question, is President Obama right to close Guantanamo Bay Prison? I asked you.
Well, it was a promise he made, and he's tried to keep it. I think it's the right thing to do, not only for international relations and America's image abroad, but also, I never understood this logic of not putting terrorists in American prisons when we've already got so many there as it is, both domestic and Al-Qaeda types. But the only thing is there was some concern about treating them to a civilian court. Because they might possibly actually be found innocent or found to, there were civil liberties violations over waterboarding and that sort of thing, which would cause some people to be released that we don't want to have released. But for the most part, though, They've got a good vetting process, and we can debate about whether or not some have actually gone back to the field, because there's people
John,
on both sides of that debate.
John, many of the states don't want these guys in the United States. Secondly, if any damage has been done to us propaganda-wise was long ago, because these guys are going out now, going to the Middle East. Third, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is down there. You bring him to the United States, you put him on trial, and his lawyer says, "Did you waterboard my client?"
Right.
And all right, out goes the case. You know, and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed walks?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
That would not happen. And it is really not the American way to hold a lot of the people there who don't have any charges against them. And some of them have been cleared, and they're trying to find places to send them to. And so the population is dwindling.
I think the propaganda has less impact, because if you look at prison systems in the Islamic world, almost to a rule, they are very, very tough. I think the more concern, where this is right, Clarence and Aaron, wait. But where you're right, there needs to be more clarity. Where we can get people released, declared to release, we should do that. We should pay foreign governments to take them if that's what's necessary, because it is in some cases. The problem with bringing them here, though, I think is twofold. Number one, the point that Pat makes about the judicial consequences of that, federal court. And the second point is, you bring them to a domestic U.S. prison, that place will become a magnet for terrorists, and it will increase. And the final, it's much easier to protect yourself on a military base than to protect American civilians in the local town.
Yeah, what's the? Hold on, please. Hold on. What's this imply? The use of drones, that's us, to kill terrorist leaders. If we had been capturing the leaders instead of killing them via remote control, we would need Guantanamo for interrogation and detention. Do you understand the line of reasoning?
Well, you may need Guantanamo in the future, is what this is saying.
It's easier to kill them than to deal with the ACLU. I think
you do kill somebody. If you captured some, you'd have to take them down. Suppose you captured a whole group of them in some new conflict. Where are you going to put them?
We have been known to get Egypt and other countries to do, Jordan to do our questioning for us.
Oh, do you think we should?
They're quite a bit rougher.
Yeah.
They're quite a bit rougher than we are, actually.
I'd be happy with that.
Have you seen drones in action?
It's been done.
I saw the other day that a fella, one of them came over his yard and he took it down with a shotgun, and I congratulate him.
What was that? The
drone? The drone. He just showed up over his yard and he just bam. God. It's exactly what he ought to do.
Out of time. Bye.